Hey River Church, Pastor Mark with you. Thanks for joining us here on our online worship experience. You just saw the Pray for Ukraine little graphic come on the screen. I want to give you an update of how our church will be responding to the crisis, the very humanitarian crisis in Ukraine. There's going to be a couple ways that you can do this. First off, we are teaming up with our state and our national office of the Church of God to send funds that will go to Germany, which they are handling then the funds being funneled into Ukraine through the Church of God. So want to let you know that. So, and 100% of your donation will go directly to the refugees and the people of Ukraine. The way you can do that is on our PushPay app. You could go to Ukraine response and give towards that line item. You can send a check in to the church or at church. You can do that, and as long as it's marked Ukraine response, we'll make sure that it gets to the right place. That's very, very simple way that you can do that. Second of all, we will be collecting items that will be put together in refugee packs that will be sent over to some of the neighboring countries that do have refugees in. There will be more details of that given in our services on Sunday morning, but also on our social media pages, and times to drop that off, and all those information will be made available to you. So I encourage you to give generously and to give in a way, we've given you ways to give that will help immensely. So there you go, there's your information, and I ask you to continue to pray for the people of Ukraine. So let's get on with our service this morning. Hey, River Church, Pastor Mark with you. Thanks for joining us for our online worship experience. Welcome to my home. Welcome to my home. Here we are in my living room. I don't think I've ever filmed right here with this view behind me, but here in my living room, straight to your living room, most likely. And so glad to be with you today. Hey, like, subscribe, share this with somebody. We are headed towards Easter. And man, what an exciting time. Easter is my favorite. And this series that we're going through, which by the way, we're in week 3 of this series called Fight Like Jesus. We're learning to wage peace like Jesus, not war, but to wage peace like Jesus. And you might be wondering why we're spending so much time in a whole series on this last week of Jesus's life. Well, let me tell you this week, this holy week, this last week of Jesus's life, it changed the world. It changed everything. And here's the other thing. If you are learning to be a person of peace, a person who brings shalom, as we've talked about, and has shalom in their life, wouldn't you want to know what Jesus did in the moments that were the most difficult? This is the Super Bowl. This is everything. And wouldn't you want to know how he responded in those moments, the biggest moments in all of history? Because I think there's some lessons there for us to learn. You know what was a big moment in history? Was the American Revolution and us becoming a country. And my wife and I got to go see Hamilton at the Benedum a couple weeks ago. What a blessing. You might wonder, man, those are expensive tickets. You're right, except my wife found that Hamilton actually has a lottery that they run. They give away a certain amount of tickets very cheap, and you can apply for these tickets for different shows. And if you happen to get picked, you get to go. And a couple weeks ago, we got picked. And so we literally sat in the third row, center section for Hamilton for $10 each ticket. $10 each ticket. Grand total of 20 to see Hamilton. And you know, Hamilton, such a big moment in the history. It's all about one of the biggest moments in history for the entire world. And it's so dramatic and so amazing. And the things that we're going to look at today, they are kind of like scenes in a play or acts of a play. And so I'm going to take you through 3 scenes of what we call Holy Tuesday. So these are 3 things that happen on Holy Tuesday. We looked at Sunday, Palm Sunday. We looked at, last week we looked at Holy Monday, where Jesus cleared the temple of the money changers. And now we're at Holy Tuesday. Or some people could call it Forgotten Tuesday, because the church kind of skips over Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and often goes right to Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. But there is more written about Tuesday and what happens than anything else. And we've been going through this series in a book that's really brought this all into crystal clarity. And I really recommend this book to you. It's called Fight Like Jesus. How Jesus waged peace throughout Holy Week. It's the basis of our series, and we're using it as a kind of a reference material, and really encourage you to pick it up and make it part of your reading. But here we are on Holy Tuesday, and Monday was crazy, right? Jesus cleared the temple out, crazy things happen, and actually in Matthew 21, verse 46, it says, they, that being the Pharisees and the chief priests, it says, they looked for a way to arrest him, but they were afraid of the crowd because the people held that he was a prophet. And so after Jesus does what he does on Monday, they want to arrest him. They want to kill him. They want to get him out of the way. But the people were in the way. The people loved him. The people surrounded him. And so I want to take you today to a scene that happens on that Tuesday. And it's found in Mark chapter 12. And this scene, and maybe we should do it this way. Scene 1. So scene 1 for us today in this great drama of Holy Week and this great battle that's happening here. And Jesus, though, is teaching us how to live as peacemakers and live in peace in the midst of it. This scene, to be honest with you, it really reminds me. Now, I grew up on Looney Tunes cartoons, and this scene, let's call it the trap. It's the trap. But this scene, this trap, reminds me of Looney Tunes scenes where Wile E. Coyote is setting a trap for Bugs Bunny. And what happens, you know this if you grew up on Looney Tunes, is that every trap that Wile E. sets, he ends up falling prey to his own trap, and Bugs Bunny ends up going on his way. This reminds me of that. This reminds me of the traps that they set for Jesus. They constantly fall in it. So let's see what they have to say here. Let's see what Mark has to say to us. Mark chapter 12, verse 13, it says, later they sent some of the Pharisees and Herodians to Jesus to catch him in his words. So this is the trap. They're going to catch him by something that he says. Now, he did say on Monday that he was going to tear this temple down and rebuild it in 3 days. And so they're taking that literally. He's talking about himself. And so now they're like, oh, we can get this guy on his words. And so they send some people in to try to catch him in his words. Some of them are Pharisees. They came to him and said, teacher, we know that you are a man of integrity. You aren't swayed by others because you pay no attention to who they are. Or there's a little bit of a play on words here. There's a kind of a idiom, a Jewish idiom in here, which means you don't pay attention to their faces. You don't look at their faces of who they are. You don't care. You're not swayed by who they are or their faces. It's important. We'll see that in a moment. You aren't swayed by others because you pay no attention to who they are, but you teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. And so anybody can see that this is just a bunch of trying to butter him up, where they're trying to flatter him with empty flattering and trying to use that as the bait to try to catch him. But Jesus isn't going to have any of that. So here's their question. Here's their trap. Is it right to pay the imperial tax to Caesar or not? Should we pay or shouldn't we? They asked him a yes or no question. Should we pay the tax to Caesar, the tax that everybody owes to the Roman Empire? These people who are subdued by the Roman Empire, who live in submission to the Roman Empire, who hated paying these taxes. It was a heavy burden. It wasn't like a 6% Allegheny County tax. It was way, way higher. And so they hated paying that tax. And so this trap is to see what Jesus will do. If you say to pay the tax, if you tell us to pay the tax, then the people will turn against you because they hate paying this tax. But if you say don't pay the tax, then we will tell the Romans that you are causing a rebellion against the tax and you are causing rebellion against the empire. And so it's a trap. It's a yes or no answer. It's fill in the blank. But Jesus isn't going to play that game. So you get the picture. They've set the trap. They put in the bait. Here we go. And this is how Jesus responds. But Jesus knew their hypocrisy. He could see into their hypocrisy. And he says, why are you trying to trap me? You'd think at that moment they'd be like, oh, this is where it starts to go downhill for them. Like, okay, first of all, he sees the trap for what it is. And so they should have known it was only going to get worse for them at this moment. And he asks, bring me a denarius and let me look at it. So a denarius was the typical coin of the day. And you'll probably see a picture of it come up here. But the denarius is really, really important. It's the Roman coin of the day. And on it, there is a face, just like our quarter has George Washington on it. There's a face on it, and it's Tiberius Caesar. There are words written on it, just like our coins would say, in God we trust. The words on this coin said, Tiberius Caesar, son of divine Augustus. Okay? And on the other side, there was an image of the goddess of peace. An image of the goddess of peace. See, the entire coin was not just a coin, it was propaganda. It was propaganda. It was a statement. And the statement was clear as day. It was, look at the face of Caesar, pay the tax, and the Son of God will give you peace. The Son, the Tiberius, the divine Son, as they saw it, of Augustus, and you will have peace. But see, Jesus didn't look at any of this for peace. In fact, he doesn't even have a coin of his own. And he says, bring me the coin. And he asked them, now this is very, very important. Remember they said, you don't look at people's faces. That's important. We lose it in the English, but we see Jesus changes the wording here when he answers them. And he says, whose image is this? And whose inscription? And they shout back, Caesar's, they replied. And then Jesus said to them, give back to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's. And it says, and they were amazed at him. So the crowd is amazed. In fact, the Greek there is like they're very amazed. They're awestruck by this answer. Now, we might look at that answer and say, okay, give to God what's God and give to Caesar what's Caesar. And we might not even think it's that radical, but maybe it's because we're missing something here. Remember, Jesus says, he doesn't use the word face. That is the face of Caesar on there, but he says he replaced the word face with image. And then anybody who was there, which all these people in the temple are all Jewish. Jesus has gone back to the temple. They were all Jewish. What he was speaking of there was the image of God stamped on each person. The wording he's using here is image, the image of God. And he's saying, look, give Caesar back his money. Who cares? Pay the tax. Who cares? It's Caesar's face on there. It's Caesar's money. Give it back. It's his image on it. It's his likeness. Give back this money. What is it to you? Like follow the rules here. Follow the rules that are on you, unless those rules force you to disobey God's rules, and then you don't obey. But he says, give it back to him because you have God's image imprinted on you. You have God's image imprinted on you. You owe everything to God. You owe everything to him. What is this money? Who cares? Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, but give to God what is God's. And so we, as followers of Jesus, we only follow the rules that man put on us as long as they don't conflict with the rules that God has for us. Because this is his game, and these are his rules. And Jesus is saying, you owe everything to God. So play by God's rules. You know, when I see these conflicts between the Pharisees and Jesus, I'm always reminded that the Pharisees were the religious leaders of Israel. They were supposed to be the ones guiding people closer to God. They were supposed to be a safe place for others to come to and be comforted and to be pushed closer to God. And so often they weren't. So I'm going to close scene 1 right here, and I'm going to show you a little video that will kind of take us into scene 2, where we'll see again the Pharisees not being a safe place as he has called them to be. But here was the beginning of day Tuesday, Holy Tuesday in the temple, and it's already rocking and rolling. So we'll come back for scene 2. Watch this.
Make me a safe place, Lord.
Make me a haven for the hurting,
A sanctuary for the seeking.
A refuge where the fallen may rise and the lost may be found.
Strengthen my arms with gentleness. Open my hands with love.
Let me not cling too tightly to the things of this world, that I may be free to grasp the treasures of your kingdom.
Lighten my heart with laughter.
May the law of kindness be ever on my tongue.
Keep my lamp burning through the long watches and the perilous darkness of the night.
Let me not define others by the dirt on their lives, the scars on their hearts, or the years on their faces.
May my home be a house of healing where confession unites us, conversation restores us.
And if there be fighting, then make me dangerous, that I may fight for and beside my sister. Lord, make me a safe place.
So Jesus wanted the Pharisees to be a safe place. And that's what he wants for us to be too. Are we a safe place for others? Are we a place that others will find forgiveness and grace and a soft spot to land? The scene number 2 that we're about to look at here in a second. So here we go. Scene number 2. Scene number 2, I would call the talk. Now, not the talk like the birds and the bees and your parents are going to give you the talk, but this is like, do you remember when your parents said to you, we need to talk, or let's have a talk, because you knew then that something had gone wrong, that something had got off the rails. And Jesus here is about to really lay in to the Pharisees. Now, you might not think that this looks very peaceful. Well, let me share with you something that might change your mind on that. If you know your Bible, you know these passages as Jesus laying into the Pharisees, where he's like, woe to you, Pharisees. Whoa, the whole thing sounds like boom. Well, some of it is, but there's an interesting little thing here. The word woe in the Greek is, you'll see it come up on your screen, O-U-A-I, ulai, okay? So uai is the Greek word, and it's literally, that word literally means to warn sorrowfully. It's an exclamation of grief. It's an exclamation of grief. Those woes signify sadness, not rage, sorrow, not anger. It's a list of sorrowful warnings aimed at correcting the damaging effects of their leadership. We know this. We do this with our children. We try to get them to see where they're at and where their actions lead. And often as a parent, we do it with a broken heart, don't we? We do it with a broken heart. Our heart's breaking as we're pronouncing, this is where you're at. This is where your actions have taken you. And maybe you heard those even as a kid, or you've heard it in your life where you knew you needed to hear these things, but you didn't want to, but they were uncomfortable truths that were spoken into you. And so I want you to just listen. I'm going to read these. I'm going to go through them quickly. In Matthew chapter 23, verse 13 through 22, I'm just going to read you to these and listen to them as a parent with a broken heart, crying out for his children. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You shut the door of the kingdom of heaven in people's faces. You yourselves do not enter, nor will you let those enter who are trying to. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You travel over land and sea to win a single convert, and when you have succeeded, you will make them twice as much a child of hell as you are. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You give 1/10 of your spices, your mint, your dill, and your cumin, but you have neglected the more important matters of the law, justice, mercy, and faithfulness. You should have practiced the latter without neglecting the former. You blind guides, you strain out a gnat but swallow a camel. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You clean the outside of the cup and dish, but inside they are full of greed and self-indulgence. And he goes on and on and on and on and on. See, Jesus wasn't willing their destruction or reveling in the opportunity to curse them. Jesus was warning them. He was warning them about where their choices and their attitudes and their hypocrisy was taking them and the state that they were in. Speaking hard truth is really difficult, but it is a way that we as Jesus fighters, we bring peace. See, Jesus fighters speak uncomfortable truth with love, and they humbly also receive the same. Have you ever done that? Have you ever had to speak that uncomfortable truth? Or have had to receive that uncomfortable truth? How you doing? How you doing with that? Is there some places that you need to speak it, or are there some places in your life that you need to hear it? So here's what I want you to do for the scene 2. Scene 2 is pretty basic. It's pretty straightforward, just like Jesus. But I want you to remember that Jesus said to the Pharisees right after this, he says, and I'm going to paraphrase this, but he says to them, he says, "Oh, like a mother hen, I have longed to gather you under my wings. As she gathers her chicks under her wings." He says, that's my heart. My heart is to gather you. Why am I saying these hard things to you? Because my heart is to bring you back into my arms where you belong. Do you need to hear something, hard truth today? Do you need to speak it and you just haven't had the courage, that uncomfortable truth to speak? So here's what I'd like you to do. I'm going to give you a 30-second timer right now. I want you to take 30 seconds and I want you to think about, is there either somewhere I need to speak that truth, or is there somewhere that I need to hear that truth in my life? So here we go. 30 seconds. Let's try this out. So here we go with scene 3, act 3, however you want to put it. And I wish I could end this on a better note, but this is not the way it ends. Jesus is leaving the temple and he goes up onto the Mount of Olives. I've been there. It's a beautiful view looking down over the valley and then up into Jerusalem, a beautiful picture. And he tells his disciples about coming events, what's going to happen. And I want to call this final scene the tragedy, because he tells them of the tragedy to come. He warns the disciples of the tragic future filled with suffering and betrayal and false messiahs. And Jesus was describing what would happen in 66 AD through 70 AD, which would be the destruction of the temple and the destruction of Jerusalem by the Romans, because the Israelites, the Jewish people, would rebel and they would fight against these people. Sorry, I thought the thing stopped. So they would fight against the Romans, and they would ultimately be destroyed. And so he tells of false messiahs. He tells of a lot of suffering. The whole chapter, then, he tells a little bit of future events that will come after that people love to talk about, especially at this time. I was asked by a waitress in Eaton Park the other day about when I thought the end of the world was, because she saw a book I was reading, and she asked me if I was a Christian, and I said yes, and I told her I was a pastor. So this is par for the course. This is what happens. And that's in Mark's gospel when he tells of all these things. Matthew is very similar, but Matthew closes his chapter out by reminding people of what they should be doing no matter what comes. And this is what the writer Jason Porterfield of Fight Like Jesus says. He says, in Matthew's gospel, Jesus concluded his apocalyptic warning by underscoring the need to be watchful. His final remarks of the day, Jesus specified, the work necessary to sustain those who watch. It is the work of giving food to the hungry, and may I add, and drink to the thirsty, welcoming the stranger, clothing the naked, caring for the sick, and visiting those in prison. Jesus was warning his disciples that if they wanted to stay awake and avoid becoming entranced by the drumbeats of war, then they must regularly engage in simple acts that cultivate peace. Only those who routinely sow the seeds of peace, small as they may be, find the strength to stand firm for peace when a world around them erupts into war. So Jesus fighters do acts of peace in the face of violence. I think it's an appropriate word for our world these days. And one of the ways that you heard about in this service that you have a chance to wage peace, to do acts of peace in the midst of war, is to give towards Ukraine. Or should I say first, pray. Pray for Ukraine. Pray for divine protection. Pray for this war to stop. Pray for safe evacuations. Pray for peace to come. Pray for Jesus to be lifted up. Pray for wisdom for everyone involved. And give every dollar that you give through online, through our Ukraine response. Every dollar, every cent will go directly to the people in need. So you'll see the information come up on the screen. This is a great way to wage peace in the midst of war. So I want to encourage you to pray, to give, and to find a way to wage peace in a world that is so often out of control. I pray this message has been a blessing to you, and I pray that you will remember that no matter what comes, no matter how bleak it looks, God is still working, and God still has a plan. I want to close with this video called But God. All of this horrible stuff that happens, but God makes a way. So watch this. We'll see you next week. Take care.